There we go.
Yep, live.
My cartoon
We
says-
are live.
We are live.
Oh, can you get onto Facebook on your phone?
My phone's dead.
having
My
this
room.
image somehow, he turns it on.
But can it log in on
Giant
an
thing gets
iPad?
Yeah.
It's like Willy Wonka.
Yeah, well,
Like
yes.
TV.
It's sort of like the
Someone who played violin.
the comedy Satsang.
For sure. May it be so. May it be so.
Just gonna make sure that it's really broadcasting. He'll get onto his
Oh, you
Facebook
check
page
it
and then
and see.
see. Yeah. And we can also see who else is watching.
Well, that shows up on that one too, but you gotta look at it, it's true.
Yes.
Oh, this is just broadcasting. This is not to a particular. That's not to a particular individual.
Do you want
No,
me
it's
to
a Facebook.
do you want me to send up
It's a
under my
Facebook
Facebook?
live
Okay,
stream,
right.
and people on Facebook are being notified. Now, if we were to take a moment and put in a note that this is Jayadeva Giving Satsang, people would know what it is, and that they get a notice and they could tune into it.
Oh.
But you have to actually pick it up and type, which is easy to do, but I can't do it from here.
I wonder.
Huh?
I wonder if I could do it from my Facebook
On the same,
and go into, because I'm a
Yes,
yeah,
remember
you're a
my password.
manager of this.
What- yeah,
company,
yeah,
so,
yeah, yeah.
okay.
Do you want to go live on my Facebook? Or do you want
no, you want to see, you want
Okay.
to
I
go to
can see you right here.
Okay.
That's what he's doing. You're on Facebook? Yeah.
Boom, MSCC.
Miracle of miracles, there you go.
It's a miracle that I
Join us on
remember my
Facebook.
password.
I think we should all watch it on Facebook.
We won't watch it. We'll just
What are we
watch
doing
this.
here?
I feel much more relaxed. Very good.
Wait, it's on the
I'm
iOS.
glad you were here,
the
so
face-
she didn't have to make that extra effort. It was
Oh, videos live.
past the
Yeah,
point.
good.
Right.
No, I-
Well, it was
okay, well,
nice
this
that
is
she
low-
was interested.
Dude,
Yeah.
this is low key trippy. What?
Did she stop here to say that
Oh my God.
or?
No, she was in class,
Okay.
and I saw her at the end of class, and I mentioned that I thought it was great you were doing it, and I said, oh, you had been wanting to go, but
Right.
it's a shame that you
Isn't
couldn't.
that
She said,
broadcast?
oh, wait, I really think you can go there.
Mhm.
I said, oh, you ought to let him know. She says, let me check, I'll check it out.
Let's start.
And then you walked out.
That's weird.
I won't start.
Yeah.
Are you still busy checking things, doing things?
Sorry, you won't.
It's not.
What are you trying to do?
I'm trying to just play your video, or play you on here.
Well, let me play here.
You know, that's a much better idea. Okay, cool.
Okay.
Wait, that idea sort of supposes that it starts here and then it continues here.
See how it moves me.
Let's see what happens.
This is a recording of that.
It's like, shh, I'm trying to watch you.
Getting the causation mixed up.
Yes.
Yeah, it's okay.
All right. I just.
He's being projected through there. Actually,
Right.
Ganapati So at first I was thinking this evening I'd like to talk about the beauty and the importance of focusing on living from the heart. And we may still do that this evening, but something else came up that I thought was really worthwhile. Come on. Over there. And that is that it's giving. How having giving as part of who we are, how we live our lives, is actually vital to being able to live life in fullness. A lot of us here regularly get together and study the Bhagavad Gita together. And as we do that, there's a part of the Gita, early in the Gita, where Krishna tells us that as a human being, we need to understand that it's part of our makeup to have sacrifice as the way that we live with our lives. We have to have that as part of our lives, sacrifice, yagna. And the word sacrifice, as we've discussed it, gets in the way because we don't really think of the word sacrifice the way yagna is meant. So we came to using the word offering, which is closer to fitting for most of us to understand about making an offering, rather than, for most of us, sacrifice meant doing without and giving up things and sort of feeling bad about what we were giving. And we're making a sacrifice, oh, poor me. And that didn't feel good. But doing an offering was closer, something we could understand, to make an offering from our heart. And that was useful. But I think it's even better to use the word giving. Now, I knew that when I use the word giving, most people today, when you hear someone saying, we're going to talk about giving, they think I'm going to ask you to give money. That's what most people think now. We're going to talk about giving. Oh, he's going to ask me for money. Which I'm certainly happy if you had to choose to do that, but that's not what's going on here. No, that's not the giving I'm talking about. I'm talking about in our lives, and this is what Krishna says, that we need to do a giving regularly as how we walk and live with our lives, because he says that puts us in relationship with the devas, the deities, those qualities of our being that are divine. That's what the devas are. They're the qualities of our being that are divine. And those qualities really give the richness to us in our lives. They move us into that place where we're in union with the Absolute, with God. And that's what the deities are for. But they're aspects of our being. But he says, Krishna says, we need to do yagna. We need to do sacrifice. We need to do offerings. And really for us, just if you think about it as we need to give. When we have something in our lives, we need to give. First he says that you give because you want to honor the divine and be a whole person. Part of your nature as a human being, just like part of your nature as a human being is you need to breathe and you need to feed the body. These are things we're aware of and recognize what it's like to be human. But Krishna tells us to be human, it's just as important to be giving in your life. Master Shivananda, when he was talking about the spiritual path, the steps to the spiritual path, he said, serve, love, give, purify, meditate, realize. And one of those steps is give. And Krishna tells us that when we're giving, when I say giving, I don't simply mean, oh, you're willing to give, you're generous. Those are good things, and those are good qualities that you want in your life for sure. But no, this is you're consciously making an offering. You're saying, okay, I'm going to give something. And by giving something, I'm giving it to be in relationship with the divine. That sounds selfish, but it's not, because when you're in relationship with the divine, you actually see the divine in everything, and you're not apart from anything, and then compassion naturally becomes part of your nature and being. And then you find that you really, besides seeing and caring for the world about you and for being in relationship with the divine, you see the divinity in yourself. You see it in everything, but that includes you. And that's really important for us, to know that we're divine. You can't know you're divine until you see the divine in everything. It doesn't work that way. But once you see the divine out there, then to be in that relationship, to have that, Krishna says, you need to make it part of who you are, to be doing giving, offering, giving. You do that. Now, he does say that when you give, the devas will become active in your life and provide for you. When you give, the devas will give to you. And then there's another step. And he says, and when you get something, after you've given and you then find yourself receiving, which in fact is how it is. It's not like you don't do it for that. You do it to give, but you will find yourself receiving too. Then he says, then it's important that when you receive something, before you just say, oh, good for me, you give some of that too. You give some of that too. He says it in the Gita, that that's important. He says if you don't, if you just take for yourself and don't give a little bit of what comes to you, it keeps the cycle going, you see. It keeps it alive. And you don't get put off track into just a separateness, a selfishness, which is separate. And that doesn't feel good, being separate. It feels really good being in union. Yoga, we're yogis. You can say that. It feels good being in union in the yoga. And this is one of the key things that we're supposed to be aware of, that giving will give us that put us in that relationship with everything. So I just thought it was really important to spend a few moments to discuss this, talk about this, because we're not as aware of it as we ought to be. I mean, it's just really, we're aware that we get hungry, but we get sort of cut off and don't realize that we're not giving. I don't want to say we're being selfish. I mean, that's fair to say, but it's much simpler than that. It doesn't need that judgmental element to it. More practical.
Yeah.
It's just practical that when you're giving, you go into relationship with the devas, who then provide for you and put you in relationship as a human being the way you're supposed to be. So you're part of the whole thing, and it's a whole working mechanism now, as opposed to being cut off and separate. And that's what Krishna is telling us.
A lake which has an outlet also has an inlet, or more than one.
Yeah.
Which is a representation of what you're saying.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yes. Say it out loud, though.
A lake which has an outlet also has an inlet, or more than one. And the inlet is as necessary as the outlet, and vice versa. If there's no outlet, which would be the giving in this case, there's the lake. It doesn't work somehow. The lake becomes something else.
Yeah.
At some point, there would be an outlet because it necessarily
Overflow.
because it'll overflow something.
Or that which was coming in would have to stop.
Yes. Right.
Yes.
So I have a question. Okay, so let's say, I practice and I practice, and I can't give something tangible, but when I practice or when I perform, I'm giving that to the devas. It doesn't have to be something tangible. It can be even a thought.
It can be an effort that you're making. It can be. He even says some people give the out breath, and some people give the inhalation and make that an offering. I mean, it can be that.
But then I always have a question. Then, how do you judge then? Like I work for someone who's not as spiritually active. Someone could say, I work really hard, and what I get is because of me.
So so there's nothing wrong with that. That they feel that way. What they get is because of their work. But the point is that, would you like to be in relationship with all and be a full being and feel in that fullness, have that flow happening in your life? Then do some giving from what you get, and you'll be delighted with what you experience from that. We've talked about this before. It's not so much the material, tangible aspect of it that's important. It's the heart, it's the attitude, it's the intention that you have that's important. And that's why the word yagna is actually very useful. Because yagna involves making an offering to the divine. That's what a yagna is, making an offering to the divine. And there's formal practices, but that's not the point here. The point is that you are making an offering to the divine with whatever you're doing, whether it's tangible or intangible, whether it's a small amount or a larger amount. That's not the point. The point is that you're making an offering of something. You're giving. And you're giving for that intention. Now, when I say an offering to the divine, Jesus quite beautifully said that the way you give to him is like honor whoever you give to. If you help someone poor, that's how you take care of me. You feed someone poor, you feed me. You do that. You take care of whatever you see around you that has need, and you'll be serving the divine. But your attitude is important.
I think of it as being a conscious action. We all are giving in one way all the time anyway. We because we're part of cycles of things, food cycles through us, which is the earth. We're all, but to consciously recognize the fact that we are part of something, and that we've all been given so much already by our parents. We could just say by strangers, by fellow students, through our teachers through the decades. We've been given so much, and all of us probably are giving, but to do it consciously, to recognize the fact that I am part of this interconnectedness, this cycling thing, and I am, and I owe it to myself to. It's like to recognize that. And that for me, that's, I know what I'm saying, but it's like a recognition of it.
We know what you're saying too.
Right. And that it's a deliberate sort of recognition, a conscious recognition that this is the truth. This is how it is.
And you're living and acting with that understanding.
Yes. And that is in a sense is is the giving, or I mean, having that understanding, I'm motivated to give, or to do it, because it's sort of like it becomes, how could I not? I mean.
So the Buddha, when I was in the monastery, I asked someone, like, what did the Buddha believe in the creation of the universe? And he said, oh, easy. There was a universe before us, and there was a universe before us, and then it collapsed, and ours was born, and then ours is going to collapse, and another one will be born. And so, again, if you want to think about it on a bigger scale, the whole universe is giving itself to the process of evolution of some kind, and at some point it will give itself into a next evolutionary cycle, and then that will birth into a next thing. And
as interesting as that is, you've got to take it home to you. What does that mean to you individually as you're living your life?
Well, I guess nothing.
Nothing.
Nothing. It means absolutely nothing. It means nothing.
You sound so Buddhist. Boy, you've been hanging out at the monastery a long time, baby.
Well, I guess it means like nothing's interdependent of itself. I mean, like every action that you do will have an inverse reaction. And so if you give something, you're going to get something. And then if you get something, you should give something. And it doesn't end. So if you're mean to someone, something's going to come back to you. So you've given a mean feeling, and it's going to come back to you at some point, and then the whole process of karma can be fed into that.
Well, that's true. You're describing karma now, but that's a little different than yagna, than this giving, this offering is, again, the intention that you're doing is to be in relationship with the divine.
Mm-hmm.
That's important that you recognize that that's what this game is about. Because when you do, then it puts you in that relationship and it becomes active in your life. It's really cool. Smirk here. Look at this. I wish everyone could see this. It's so great. Ron does a good smirk. Got something about to bubble up.
Yes. If you get to that place of yagna, then everything you just said just goes away, because there is no karma. You're not creating anything. You're just doing and letting the action go and happen, and so you're not expecting anything to come back, and nothing has to come back to you. Things will happen around you, but there is no karmic debt, for lack of a better word. I mean, there's no karma dragging you around.
There's no duality.
But then
I'm sorry.
I feel like, so how would I phrase this question? Because I know what I want to say, but I'm trying to figure out. So everything, I guess, then is an offering if you're thinking about it this way, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing, though. That is real. I don't know if I can fully back that, though, because, I mean, if you brush your teeth, some things have to be an action for yourself. To take care of the physical body.
Well, wait a minute. You heard we gave out in the teacher training Swami Satchidananda's affirmations for inner peace?
Yes.
Did you get to listen to that?
A couple, yeah.
A couple times, okay. So he says, when you're in the shower, you're brushing your teeth, once you recognize that you've given yourself as to be of service, as part of God doing service through you, then brushing your teeth is taking care of God's body.
Mm-hmm.
And you're serving God by brushing your teeth.
The same way you would if you swept the altar, the puja table,
yeah.
or if you swept the floor in the temple. It's the same. Brushing the teeth is no less service than brushing the floor of the temple.
But
there's no but.
We all got a butt, man. Come on. Okay.
Why do you do your hatha practice in the morning?
So I don't.
It's
what you're
really-
doing
it's
is you're
just a
saying,
shift.
when
Warm
I'm,
up the-
when I'm
the
taking
physical
care
body.
of myself, isn't that taking care of myself? And the answer is yes and no. It depends again on your attitude. If your attitude is I'm separate, then yes, it's taking care of yourself. If your attitude is I see that I'm part of the allness, and this body and this body and this body are all part of that, but I'm engaged with this body, with my mind and my ego, my sense of individuality, but I'm not separate from. I'm individual but not separate from. So this is God. That's God. This is God. Everything becomes God.
Right.
And so that's why Ram Dass was saying that what you're doing is you're taking care of God's, and Swami Satchidananda, you should see yourself as taking care of God's body. You're cleaning this temple. Jesus said, this is the temple. You should see your body as the temple of God.
So
it's a shift in it's just a little shift in attitude. I don't do
Just a little shift.
my.
just a tiny bit.
It is.
It is.
It is just a little shift.
I don't do my practice in the morning to keep this body healthy for me. If this body is here or if this body goes away, that's not of concern to me anymore. And I mean, last night was. I mean, you were here last night with that program, and really part of that is you don't have to worry about anything. If the body's here, that's fine. You enjoy it. You go with the flow. If it's gone, you have nothing to worry about. You are going to go home. And so any action that you do, taking care of this body, is just to take care of the body so that you can serve, so that you can give. And it's just that little shift. It's like, okay, the only reason that I'm keeping this healthy is because I'm here, and I'm here to serve, and the best way I can serve is to keep this body healthy.
I'm using this body for service.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I guess in my version, not in my version, but in my way of thinking, I can't do the thing that I came on earth to do, which is like, to sing, and I can't do that without a physical body. So if I know like the rebirth,
but you have a physical body, so you should take care of it.
Yeah, but then so yesterday it's like imagine where you're going to go, and for me personally, I don't believe in heaven. I believe in the rebirth, and then once you become to the divine, you kind of lose. You just kind of. I don't want to say dissolve, but you just become one. And so I don't really believe that you're going to go to heaven. You're going to have a condo in heaven. I don't believe that at all.
Bummer.
But I mean, that's
Just lost
not
my
true.
condo
I
in
mean,
heaven. Okay.
that is like that. That is so.
What
I know that's
about now?
preposterous to me. What?
What about now?
What?
What about now?
Do you
Yeah.
believe in heaven now?
No.
Why not?
Well, what do you believe? Well, whatever you're going to call it. What about now? Something is happening, and the thing you call you is here,
Yes.
and the thing you call you likes to sing, gets joy out of singing.
Right.
And I call that you. This is a particular manifestation of God who loves to sing, and there are others also who love to sing.
Right.
And there are a lot who love to listen. And this version or incarnation or sunbeam of God loves to sing, and so God gets to sing and party and whatever yodel as this version. So there's no problem here. And as long as you're in this body, you can sing. This version can sing.
Right.
And
why aren't you in heaven while you're singing?
I guess the whole like analogy, like I'm in heaven. Yeah. That.
Well, you are in heaven.
Yeah.
And there are non-physical. You may not. I don't care if you don't believe it. There are non-physical entities. I mean, there are angels here. There are elders here, all around us at all times. Co-present. they get off on it. They party and dance. They love your singing. They love, they love participating, and they like to. So
you're doing a great service.
yes,
When you're doing that, and if it's your dharma, if it's what you're here to do, and you're doing what you're here to do. Again, Krishna says in the Gita that when you're doing that, that puts you in touch with being connected with the divine. That puts you in that state of where you're in that flow, which some people might call heaven.
Yeah,
Doesn't make any difference what you call it.
It was funny because last night was very interesting for me because also heaven from
Last night with David
the
Young.
David Young,
Yeah, it was
yeah.
very,
Okay.
very interesting.
For me, heaven isn't where we're going. It was interesting because it would have been interesting to sort of discuss that with the group, but that's like an all-night satsang just discussion, because on the one hand, I like you, I'm not looking for heaven. So in one sense, it doesn't exist, but it does exist. There is that place, and you could go there. You do go there if that's your choice. Again, in the Gita, Krishna says, whatever you aim for, I'm here to take you there. And so if heaven is your goal, then you'll go to heaven and you'll have your house and you'll
for a long
your
time,
furniture.
and then you come back into this and complete working on coming into fullness, full union with the Absolute. Heaven's a temporary experience.
I mean, heaven is just another place where you can go. I mean, when he said to imagine the furniture in the house, that furniture is in my house right now. And it's like, so I'll go home and I'll lie down on my couch, and that'll be the same couch that I might call the couch that I sit on if I go to heaven. No difference.
But
And
what
so-
if it's not the same couch you would sit on in heaven?
Well, then he's going to get another nice couch.
Get an upgrade.
Every day.
Well, according to what David was sharing with us, in that realm that he's described as, and he calls it heaven. I mean, whatever you want to call it, in that loka, in that sort of realm of being, your thoughts manifest. Period. At the speed of light, and that's the way he described it.
causal plane.
So if I want the couch that I have with a certain fabric on it, reupholstered exactly the way I imagine it and all that, then that's what's going to be there, and that's just the way it is in that realm. So the house will look like whatever I want. It'll have my nice stove and kitchen and all that stuff. I can imagine that. And that's just gonna be what it is when I go to that. If I go to that plane, again, my choice is not to, like John's. I mean, John wants to go to the Absolute, and that's a different place. Heaven is just like this, the way Jayadeva described it. That's what I believe as well. It's just another plane, and yes, it's a more pleasurable plane than this one because, at least according to the Vedic tradition, it's just another dimension of being, and you can go there and you'll hang out, like Jayadeva said, for a while. Your good karma will play itself out. You'll dance around and enjoy, and have whatever you want, and then you
Come back to a
here.
form where you can
Actually
approach the divine
Exactly.
actively.
Yes.
Which is the form we're in now.
Mm-hmm. It's a much different way of thinking because, especially in the West, we have been trained to think in the Abrahamic tradition in the mainstream Abrahamic tradition, to think heaven is where we want to get to, and so many of us that's what we see, and we hear it in the Jewish. I mean, you live a good life, and the teachings are exactly the same. You live a good life so that you can go to that heavenly realm, and so that's the afterlife that mainstream Judaism talks about, is exactly that heavenly plane, and you enjoy it. Mainstream Judaism doesn't talk about reincarnation coming back. You have to go to the Kabbalah to see those teachings, but so there's absolutely no contradiction, and it's just all part of that same flow, and so that's where you go and you enjoy and you see your other relatives, whoever is there, and they greet you. I mean, this is what David was talking about last night. I mean, they're there for you, and they welcome you and they greet you, and you see them, and you get to sing with George Harrison and who else did he talk about last night?
John Lennon.
John Lennon. All of these beings.
I have a question. So, in mainstream religion, why have there been a heaven and a hell? It seems, I was reading the sutras again, and you disregard the wicked, right? But that to me seems like I get what it means, but what is wicked? I mean, what determines someone?
You said you get what it means. So what's the question?
Good point. Well, no. Okay, sorry. I had the question in my head. I knew exactly what I was going to ask. If there is truly, like a heaven and a hell, what you do correctly, all this good karma and whatnot, I feel as though if you.
Well, let's not push it to truly a heaven and a hell. Let's just say, let's just get rid of the word truly and just say, if there's a heaven and a hell, how could we view that way of thinking and considering that would be useful and practical and helpful? Because that's the point. I mean, there's a lot of religions which have that. I mean, in the Gita, Krishna talks about the
demonic,
the divine and the demonic, and as he describes those to Arjuna, and he tells the qualities of the people who are divine, the qualities of the people who are demonic, and as he describes the qualities of the people who are demonic, Arjuna recognizes some of those qualities that he has, and he gets pretty concerned because the way Krishna talks about the demonic is they are going to hell. That's the way it's described. I mean, what's happening to them is they're really lost and in a very devastated they're doomed, basically. That's the way it's described. And so Arjuna gets very anxious, and he says, no, Arjuna, relax. Even though you recognize these things, don't worry, you're of the divine nature. You're moving. And just to sort of finish with that, Swami Satchidananda with Sriman, I encourage you to ask your question of him.
I think he responded.
You did?
Vishnu,
he responded?
they use Vishnu Puja.
The Vishnu
for,
Puja.
Krishna.
There you go. He's great.
And he responded in minutes.
Yes.
It's
yeah.
I was like, oh my gosh.
Isn't that great? And so he said, and it's so clear and was so practical and helpful, that the divine, how you understand divine is anything that moves you toward the union, toward yoga. And demonic is anything that moves you towards separation. It's so practical and simple, and gets rid of the big judgmental game and just lets you look practically at it. Yes.
It gets rid of the idea that there's a finish line. or that there's a completion, that because you're moving toward or moving away. That's not being there or not being there.
Yes.
It's call it process, or it's movement. It's not
Direction, I guess.
It's directional. It's not being.
It's not location.
You can't get east on planet Earth. There's no east.
I am now east.
It's relative. You can go east, but you can't
That's
get
beautifully
east.
put. Yeah,
You
yeah.
can't get west. It's like that. It really is like that. So you can be moving toward into yoga, or inadvertently moving away from yoga.
And
So
how?
stopping point.
So going back to the heaven and hell that's in religions, practically, if you just sort of step back and say, how could that be useful? Well, people have things they do which are divine and move them toward union, and you describe that's going to take you to a nice experience of what you want. And people do things that are going to move them into separation. You say, boy, that's going to take you to hell, and you don't want to hang out there. And it's very practical. I mean, I know people go to judgmental stuff, which is not useful. It's really, being judgmental is not the point. It's practical. Because you want to be in the union, because that's where you find the satisfaction. That's where you find fullness and completeness and joy. And we all like happiness. We do. We all like happiness. I mean, the people who do nasty things think it's going to make them happy. They do.
That's why they're doing it.
Yeah. Everyone's doing stuff because they think it's going to make them happy. And some stuff's effective, it's divine, and some stuff's ineffective, it's demonic. It's practical. And so talking like that is to help people who don't yet grasp this and see and understand their nature, to just be a way to help them look at these things, to move them towards what's going to serve them best. That's all. That's why I'm saying get rid of the real part.
Yeah, so it's not like a fixed. I mean, it's not. It's one thing that they talked in there was a monk there. He said, no one's good and no one's bad. It's all kind of based on, what's going on right now. And so one person could be judged good and they do great actions, and then tomorrow they could not hold the door for someone, and somebody like, you're a mean person if you're not holding the door, but you just said he was a good person yesterday, so it's not you're a good or a bad person.
I mean, if you look at what's real, and then you read these things about in the Gita about the demonic who are going to go into bad places and have things go worse for them in the next lifetime, and everything's going to move them more toward that, it sounds like it's hopeless for those folks. It does. But it's not really talking about those folks. It's something for you who's reading this. They're not reading this, by the way. It's you who's reading this to see that and say, I don't want to do that. Let me make note of that. It's really practical. It's for you to say, let me choose the things that are going to help me get to that place where I can be in touch with the divine, and be at peace, and find the joy and happiness that's my innate nature, and live in that. Well, how do I do that? And it comes back to tonight's topic, do some giving.
Yeah.
It's all like the Gita and everything is like a self-help manual.
Yeah, for sure.
A manual on how to be happy, or how to succeed in life.
Yeah. That's really what it's about.
Yeah.
It's, if you think about it, the way hell is described, it's all suffering. I mean, that's what people there are doing. So and you've heard the phrase, hell on earth. It all
We hear
works.
that much more readily than heaven on earth. We ought to hear as well. Okay.
True.
Yeah.
But if you look at things in that way, then what Jayadeva said is perfect, and every religion is just trying to help people stay away from the separation, because when the separation is happening, that's when beings are suffering. When there's union, that's when they're not suffering. I was trying to look for another word, and I'm not sure.
So
I mean,
those
that's ideal. It's also to control people. Religion.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Like, don't do
but
this.
there is the practicality of it, as Jayadeva says, because it's guiding us. They have to somehow come to the realization that
people abuse scripture
giving
teachings
all the
for
time.
sure.
Yeah,
Yes, the leaders or vested interests.
Right. They have an agenda.
Use it and abuse it. But also for people, the masses of people or certain people who don't have as much ability to understand or don't have access to it or whatever, it's to give sort of a general, a gross or an external guideline on how to behave and how to act. And that is useful, to have that.
I mean, if you look at what the Gita says about the demonic, it looks like hopeless, and they're going to be stuck there, and they're going to get worse and worse, and it's terrible and awful. But in truth, the minute you turn into truth, everything is God.
Mm-hmm.
The demonic they're not
separate.
They're not God.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's no way they're unaware that they're God, and that's sad. But they, by their innate nature, have to come to realization of the truth at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So that idea of the demonic and you do bad and you're going to hell and you're stuck there forever, that's just to get you to turn away from that stuff. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, in the Chandipat and many other scriptures, these nasty demons who are fighting against the divine, when the goddess comes up and conquers them, they immediately go to her abode, they go to heaven.
Trungpa Rinpoche, his comment about this is that enlightenment is the ego's ultimate disappointment.
I don't kind of understand.
And if the ego realizes it isn't,
Oh.
it dissolves.
Yeah.
Right?
Ego thinks it's important and it realizes, oh.
Well, it realizes
had a
that
function.
it's like the demons who go to the abode, in a sense, because it's made out of the divine, or it isn't what it thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
It's not separate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess in that vein, you can't help someone figure out that they're God.
No,
Right?
no. You're not supposed to help someone else. It's you're supposed to work with.
But how is someone, if you, okay, let's
Say it.
There's no but.
You're just supposed to love others and be of service however you can.
I get the whole lead by example thing, but there must be
I didn't say lead by example. I said love and be of service.
Which,
They might, if they're in a place where they can see what you're doing, it will
Serve them.
It'll spark that. They have the inner light. They are divine. They're God. Everything's God. They're God.
Mm-hmm.
They're God as much as you are. You might be aware of it. They might not. But they will be. So all you do is just shine your light. Be loving.
So,
That's it.
Uma was telling me about this, that there are Hindu atheists.
Sure.
How can you be an atheist yet still acknowledge that, I mean, there's no God, right?
He's an atheist.
It's a culture.
Wow.
But I feel like that's a double negative. I mean,
It is, because he certainly recognizes divinity for sure and loves it.
But is there a
But
difference
he doesn't
between
believe in
divinity and
God.
God?
Oh yeah.
Can you explain?
There's a whole branch of Hinduism which doesn't have any sense of God.
So divinity and God is...
And every Hindu philosophy, every one of them, those that are completely engaged with worshiping God, all say that you come to a point when you have to let go of your concept and belief in God. You get to that point. Swami Satchidananda would use the example of a fox that was completely being swarmed with fleas that were driving him crazy. And I mean, he was just crazy with it, and he was thirsty and went into the stream, the water, the pool, to get a drink. And he noticed that as he went in, the fleas that when he put his legs in the water, they climbed up. And he was a smart, clever, sly
Wily
fox.
as a fox.
And so he said, wow. And he grabbed a reed and broke it off and stuck it in its mouth and walked into the water and felt all the fleas going up. And then he put his head in the water. They were all in the head, and they climbed onto the reed. And he was clever enough to then let go of the reed. God's like that. As you get to the point where God, as you focus on God, everything else will just leave. But then you have to let go of God to be free.
Sorry.
That's fair. You don't have to pay any attention to that.
It'll take
Good.
time.
That's just the
It's
teaching.
better to let yourself be confused.
But then what's the point of like ISKCON then? What's the point of, I mean,
To help people
worshipping
get there.
Krishna?
Why not?
Worshiping is really cool.
But then at some point
If
you
it's
just have to
your
let it
nature,
go,
if
right?
it's your
Yeah.
nature to be worshiping, which if you're a bhakti, a devotional one, you need a form to worship. And you pick a form and you worship it, and it just takes you there. And then you get free. It's what will take you all the way. Worshiping takes you there. That's the twig. That's putting the twig in your mouth. That's the point. Everything else, you'll be set free of all your problems by doing that. That's the point of it.
That's good. Huh. I'm gonna have to think about that for a little bit.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Absolutely.
And then Ron sort of,
Here's a monkey wrench. Find out who is asking these questions.
Ah,
Find out without asking. Find
You
out
sound like
what,
Rumi
who
now.
and what is asking these questions.
what?
Rumi from Community of the Spirit. You have that poem, Community of the Spirit. Read it.
You know what? I'm not gonna ask a question.
Think of, it says in there, Rumi says, think of who created thought.
Well, wouldn't it be the divine? Or Krishna? Because
Whatever, if you focus on that and find yourself tuned into that, that's a good thing to focus on.
Great.
I mean, just, Ram Dass just gave you something to consider. He said, you're asking this question, try to think, where's this question coming from? Who's thinking? Where's this thought? Where's this question coming from? And really stay with that until you find the answer.
Recognizing that it's not an intellectual process. It's I'm going to call it a feeling process. Feeling in the sense of sensing. It's not emotional. It's feeling or sensing is the best term I have.
Good.
Just think of the chant we just did. How did it end? Tatvamasi.
Isn't it I am that?
You are that.
You are.
Or no, I am. It is really I am that.
Tat, Twan,
That
that is you.
that is
That
you.
are
Yeah.
Yeah, that is you. You are that, yeah.
That's where you come to. I mean, I can say I don't believe in God because the only way for me to reconcile all this is Ramdas is trying to put forth is that this whole experience that I'm having is God. Because for lack of a better word, you have to call it something. Whether you call it humanity or God or divine or the absolute. Words
You
can't
go with that.
Yeah.
Because it's so free of all
and
the
that's
other stuff.
you're working towards that point of saying that's all there is. So Krishna or Shiva or whoever, Ram, none of them have their own individuality anymore.
Now, with that said, don't discount people's faith and relationship with God through their Ishta Devata, their chosen form of the divine, because it's completely as real as anything you could possibly imagine. So in ISKCON, their relationship with Krishna, it's totally as realer than anything else you know. But there's absoluteness, which that takes them to, and does it for them, so they love that.
But then wouldn't the affiliation with Krishna keep you in the rebirth cycle until you realize that everything is God? Then that would keep you in the rebirth cycle.
No, many of them do
Well,
realize
but
that.
hear what
it's
you just said. Wouldn't it keep you there until what?
You realize that everything is God.
Yeah, but that's what it does for them. They realize that those folks see everything as God, more than almost anybody you've ever met.
Many of them.
But then I would assume
Many.
that if everything is, so if we're placing God with Krishna, that everything is Krishna.
Sure.
Yeah.
Why not?
But then you don't believe in God. So then wouldn't you believe in divine?
Wasn't Krishna the straw, the tool?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why doesn't it fall away?
It does.
No. They at some point let go of it. They do.
Huh.
The it
Hmm.
is an experiencing or a feeling. It's not a thought.
By the way, in that story of the fox, that reed was really helpful. It was really important.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's not like, oh, who cares about the reed? No, the reed was the savior of that fox.
Well, I mean, if you don't see that everything, I mean, that's the thing. I see everything as God, quote unquote, but maybe I'm not there yet to acknowledge it just yet. But I mean,
You have to do it
you
without
can
the
understand that
quote
everything.
Go ahead.
unquote. Without the quote unquote.
No, you can understand that everything is God, right? But no, not everything is God.
He just said he doesn't see it that way.
Wait, but then, oh gosh, so I'm going in a circle.
So you said,
I don't know. I
I
understand,
see
but I
everything
don't.
as God, but I think you intellectually accept and grasp that concept.
Yes.
That's not the same as actually seeing everything as God. That's a realization. That's not an intellectual understanding. That's a realization. And when that happens, you can let go of the straw.
Right.
The Vedantic way of looking at it, which really helped me a lot, is there's only God. It's not everything is God. There is only God. That's Advaita.
And understanding what, and then that could be like a koan, something to contemplate. What does that mean? And if on a feeling sense, what does it mean that there's only God? And feeling into that.
Speak up for them.
Yeah. What does that mean?
5 people watching right now.
I mean, that could be a method that somebody could. I'm sure people have. You know, what does? There's only God. What does that mean? But asking the question not as an intellectual question, but as an experiential, felt question, as a method for your own self. If there's only God, what does that indicate? If there's only God, that means that this is only God. That means that this mind or these thoughts are only God. That means that this speech is only God.
That means that illusion and confusion is only God.
Yes.
But then what's the point of God? It's just, it does all back into everything.
It's all the what?
It's just everything. I mean, if it's everything, then everything still exists and there's still all the crap.
Yep.
So what's the point? I mean, what's the point?
The point is to realize it.
So,
To realize.
And when it's realized, which is not an intellectual thing, when it's realized, it's answer.
so
It's the answer to the
an
question.
answer for you in the Gita, studying one of the things in the Yoga Sutras, it says to spend time studying scriptures. So the Gita is a scripture. It's one of, you can study any scripture, but studying scripture is useful. And in the Gita, as we study it, there's a lot of stuff said in there to consider and help us recognize, realize, remember what's true, and put us in relationship with truth, with ourself, with the self, with the divine. And it's one of the things said is when you do connect with this realization, not intellectually, but when you do, what happens is there's a completeness, a fullness, a satisfaction that takes place that supersedes all sensual experiences, good or bad. The most delightful sensual experiences don't even come up to they don't have, they don't even have any weight, they don't measure at all next to that. And that's what happens when you come into that realization. So, yes, the crummy stuff, the horrors, the discontent, the monstrous things, all of those are the divine too. They are. And it's important that you recognize that so that you don't lose your connection with that. The experiences in our play, the Leela, the play of God, which is going on in this sensual, phenomenal experience we have in the world, is a great drama. I mean, it's not just smiley, happy faces. You probably know that. But it's not supposed to be. I mean, movies that are just smiley, happy faces bore us to tears. We're not interested in that.
They don't get made, consequently.
Yeah, we're not interested in that. We're not. We want the challenges, we want the drama, we want the sadness and the tragedy and the accomplishments and we want all of that because it's what makes life interesting and fun. Now, that doesn't mean you want to live in misery. I'm not saying that. But if you didn't experience misery, then being set free of it wouldn't have any sense of reward to it. And we all have that. The light only shows upon the darkness. That's why they're in the world of duality, which this manifest realm is composed out of duality. Every bit of it is duality. But behind it all is absoluteness, is truth, and that's permeating, that's what everything is. I mean, once we start trying to give words to it, they always are inadequate and fall short of what's real, what's true. Scriptures tell us they can only point toward what's real. Words can't say it. There's no way to express it with words. And thoughts, in fact, can't think it. You can only realize it. But we can realize it. We can know it. We can realize it. We can live it. We can experience it. And that's the joy of being in the form we're in this human form, that we have that available to us.
It's fun to laugh.
It's really fun to laugh.
And I mean, again, circling back to the giving, it's sometimes in all that crap that's happening that we see that giving come out and the humanity being demonstrated at that point. Because how many times when these natural disasters happen, communities just come together to help out. They're giving at that point. And I don't know, from watching them on TV or wherever, you know, it certainly looks like they are really happy doing that, and they're expressing their fullness at that point, I think, in giving to whatever's happening there.
So Krishna tells a story of what are the good guy and the bad guy sent on their mission? The names?
Arjuna and
no, not Arjuna.
Oh.
His big brother.
Oh, Yudhishthira and Duryodhana?
Yeah. When he asked each one to go out and find what's not natural to them.
Oh.
Duryodhana is supposed to go find someone who's perfectly good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Yudhishthira
is supposed to find someone who's all bad.
Mm-hmm.
And they go look through the land, and they both come back and say what they see is what's their nature.
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I mention that because Ron just now told us that humanity is people stepping up to do good things.
Mm-hmm.
And I hear some people saying humanity is full of crap.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you hear different people describe humanity in different ways, and it just shows their nature. There's a nice thing to hear, Ron.
Mother Teresa, I heard
Mm-hmm.
said about her, she said that when she was maybe asked a question, but when she's doing her thing with the lepers or whatever, feeding them, she's ministering to her Lord in all of his most distressing forms.
Mm-hmm.
I love that that's how you define humanity. That's the way you see humanity. Thank you. That's beautiful.
But so it's true that I don't know if the Gita said this or the sutras, but how you see yourself is how you see others. I don't know if it was the sutras that said that, but if you're not a friend to yourself, everyone else is an enemy. I forget where I read that.
I think it was in the Gita, yeah.
In the Gita.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean that extends to giving, right? If you see everything as I work for everything, why should I give anything? I work really hard for everything. I work really hard for all my money. It's all mine. I work for it. I don't see any reason to give it to anyone else. I don't see a reason to give it to God.
That's completely rational what you're saying, but it's also ignorant because it doesn't show that you're in relationship and part of this fullness that you are part of.
But it isn't true that you have to come to the realization that you are there before you can give. Can't give.
No. You can use the giving. You can hear from someone that suggests you do it, and if you do it, you'll come into that. It will help you come into that realization.
Everybody doesn't. You don't have to do it the way that it happened to Scrooge. but in that case, how did Scrooge end up? How's he? He ended up being happy.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what was he doing? He was giving.
Mm-hmm.
But he went through a realization first.
Of course, yeah.
He didn't just give and then go through a realization.
No, I know that's why I said.
Oh, right. Okay.
But there's no one way to do it either.
Fear. He had a bad experience, and then he gave something.
But it always seems
when
like
he gave something, then he had the realization. No, he had the realization when he gave. But he was fearful. He was motivated because he saw things weren't going well for him in the way he was living.
He was graced.
Yeah.
It always seems like here, I don't know if it's different others overseas, but it always seems like people here, they don't, give or believe in the divine, if they don't believe in that yet until something cataclysmic happens. And then they start.
Well, there's different circles of people.
That was very gentle. Good answer. Yeah.
I'm not sure that's a fair assessment of everyone in the West.
No, okay, maybe not everyone, but it always seems, especially I guess like from my generation, a lot of us are not really connecting with the divine. A lot of us are turning into people who turn away from that because I work for what I have. I don't need.
If you went to school in Europa, you'd probably find that not the case.
Yeah,
but people your generation.
We have like an overarching sort of trend in our leadership right now that is definitely reinforcing.
Of that
absolutely.
inclination.
Yes.
What you might call demonic.
Right.
Yeah.
But see, this is my view. I see things totally. I'm pleased and more hopeful because I see people in your generation and the sort of around your generation as rejecting that and moving towards more more union, more cooperation, more community, because they have to. I mean,
and everywhere it's happening, and on all different levels. What you're saying,
I think so.
Yeah, it's happening in communities and on roof gardens in New York City, and.
Don't you think people felt that way, like during the '60s, like the hippie, like people were moving in that direction, and then look what happened. And even those people boomeranged and became.
Oh, sure.
Like me.
Well, not you, but like my uncle. I mean, a lot of people who became conservative and support, what's going on.
But
So, like, isn't that just going to happen again? I mean, of how do we know it's moving in the right direction? Because it seems like it's.
Well, I think.
Some mushrooms.
I do.
I think if you look at how things are now, they're getting they didn't get bad enough.
Yeah.
And I think we're pretty close to rock bottom, because I think the kids now are realizing they can't buy houses. They can't. I mean, there's lots of things that we could do, and our greed was fed. I mean, after the '60s, I share this all the time in political circles. As bad as Trump is, I think the worst president of the United States was Ronald Reagan, because we wouldn't be where we are today if it wasn't for him. That was probably the worst mistake in our history. Was him as president, and what he represented, and how he demonized things, and played, press and everybody to come to that point, because the reality he projected and convinced people of was the start of the lie that we're living today, and it's just louder and bigger right now. And so, I mean, and again, going back to the Gita, Arjuna had to reach the lowest of lows before he said, I can't do this, come teach me. And again, this is the hopeful Ron, in that we've reached that point now. And the kids, they have to do something. And I mean, going as happy as I am and hopeful, there's a side that it's like, we're screwed. Mm-hmm. I mean, we have, he's probably the last generation might be the last generation to have an earth to live on. Mm-hmm. I mean, we may be beyond the point of saving this planet. We don't know, but
a few years back,
there's that side is equally there.
A few years back, might have been about 10 or 12 years back, when the Dalai Lama spoke at Rutgers.
Yeah.
Oh.
And someone in the audience asked the question, saying, what do we do now that the world's getting so terrible and getting worse and worse? What can we do? And the Dalai Lama said, I don't see what you're talking about. I see the world getting better and better. And so if we have a leadership and we have selfishness in power in our country, and we see that, you can focus on that, it's true, and talk about that, but that just brings focus to that. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you can also look like the Dalai Lama did, mm-hmm. and notice that there's places like this, and there's people tuning into this talk on Facebook, mm-hmm. and there's so many people, so many places, so much richness of spiritual teachings that are spreading, mm-hmm. and community that's building and growing everywhere. And if you focus on that and look at that and talk about that, it will nurture that, and that will become the light that's shining and leads the world. And we mm-hmm. don't have to worry about the planet disappearing, because there's plenty that can be provided for the entire planet. Mm-hmm. And we really do have the means to provide a beautiful future for our world. And we can do it. We can love one another and believe in that. It's important to believe in it. Mm-hmm. It is.
I don't know if you I forget what the quote is, but where your mind goes, energy flows? Is that mm-hmm. something to that effect?
True.
But
That's certainly true.
Something like that, but
No, it's not even something like that. That's it.
okay.
I mean, there
There
are,
we go.
there are different ways that same thing can be stated. You may have heard were slightly different, but yes, yes, that's a universal truth.
And so now that I'm, a vegan, when you're talking about like giving, in my eyes, that's the best way I can give. I can give in an aspect like that. Do not take so much from the planet. I can give through that way for me. But there's one thing that I find interesting is there's no right answer. No answer that.
There's no one specific thing. You have to look to yourself.
Exactly.
You look to yourself and you say, I want to be doing offering to the divine. As I get what I get in my life, I want to give some. It's simple. That's a simple concept.
Exactly.
And you just give as you can. I love to share the story because it moves me. It reminds me when I was a kid at college, and all of you have heard the story probably 10 times because you could hang out with me. But some friends and I from college went to New Orleans for Mardi Gras. And none of us had ever been there, and we went to New Orleans and we enjoyed Mardi Gras tremendously. We had a lot of great experiences. We drank a lot of alcohol, we drunk, we got in the crowds and you could lift your feet up and the crowd moved and you moved, you didn't fall down. It was just quite an experience. And we spent like 4 or 5 days there, and then it was time to go home, and we hadn't slept, we hadn't bathed, and we needed a ride home because we were almost out of money, and we found someone to give us a ride back to California. So we got in the back of this van and traveled, and we just traveled in this van overnight, and we arrived in Fresno, California, somewhere around 7 in the morning. And that's where they were going, Fresno, which wasn't too far from Palo Alto, which is where we were going. But it was far enough that we had to take a bus to get there, or a hitchhike or something. But he dropped us off at the bus station, and we're there, and I think there were 6 of us. So we were in the back of a van all night, gross, unshaved, not cleaned up. And we get into the bus station and we look at the price for the bus tickets, and we're about 16, 18 bucks short for the 6 of us to buy a ticket to Palo Alto, all of us to get tickets. So we decided we would go and ask people if they would mind giving us some money so we could get our tickets. And we all went around and talked to everyone, went individually and asked people, and then we got back together in a room that no one was there. There was this one sort of old guy, looked like a street guy, and he was sitting on the bench, and we were just started talking. And he said, God, you get anything? I didn't get anything. I don't know. I got $1.50, but that's all. And no one would give us anything. We were pretty gross, and we weren't very good at this. And we were complaining, and then this guy spoke up from the bench. He said, boys, what's the problem? And we wanted to tell people so we were happy to tell him about our problem. He said, we just got here, we don't have enough money to get back to Palo Alto, get our ticket, and we asked everyone, and no one will give us any money, and we just, we can't get home, we can't get to school. And he says, what do you need? We need $16. He says, come with me. And he stood up, and he walked over. He had a overcoat on. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a little bottle, opened it up, took a drink, and he's walking. But there were 6 of us, so we followed him into the bathroom. He put his bottle, he says, okay, and he reached into his other pocket and pulled out a roll of bills, and he gave us like $24, $26. He said, we don't need 16, we only need 16. No, you need to get a coffee and some donuts. So he gave us some money, and we said, what's your name and address? We'll send you the money. When we get to school, we have the money. We can give it to you. He says, it's okay. No. We want to give you the money. We all have money at school. We can get it to you. Please, let us pay you back. So I'll tell you what, boys. If you'd like to pay me back, If you ever see someone in need and you have the means to help them, you help them. That changed my life. Hearing that at that moment transformed my life. It was one of the most beautiful, moving moments I've ever had.
He was a plant.
That was really beautiful. It's a good message, huh?
Mm-hmm.
You want to pay me back if you ever see someone in need and have the means to help them, you help them.
Wisdom.
There's a piece of scripture, as many have been come upon angels unaware. You know? It seems like that kind of experience. Well, okay. So we talked about giving. Let's do a closing, huh? I got the sheet here. I love the closing shlokas because,
one person.
I mean,
Yeah, it's not me.
if we can end
The one
and
person was
go
one
out
person.
thinking like this, we're in good shape.
Do you have one I could possibly use?
On the, what?
Is it number 27?
35.
I only have till 29. I can share off him.
That's okay. There's more here.
Oh, okay. You're cute. Looks like this is not all the nice.
If we could end and go out on the, focusing on the sutra that Jayadeva just shared, that story, that also would work.
Which one?
Focusing on the unfolding of the sutra that
Okay.
Jayadeva just shared, the
Oh,
story.
yeah.
Focusing on that story, the essence of that story, would be sufficient as a benediction, as a going out.
Yes.
Even if folks-
Yeah. Yeah. Hmm. Om Sarvesham Swastir Bhavatu Sarvesham Shantir Bhavatu Sarvesham Purnam Bhavatu Sarvesham Mangalam Bhavatu. Auspiciousness be unto all, perfect peace be unto all, fullness be unto all, prosperity be unto all. Sarve bhavantu sukhinaha, sarve santu niramaya, sarve bhadrani pasyantu, ma kaschid dukkha bhag bhavet. Happiness be unto all, perfect health be unto all. May all see good in everyone. May all be free from suffering. Asatoma Sadgamaya, Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya. Lead us from unreal to real. Lead us from darkness to the light. Lead us from the fear of death to knowledge of immortality. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
is full, this also is full. This fullness came from that fullness. Though this fullness came from that fullness, that fullness remains forever full. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanao Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavaditamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May protect us, grant us wisdom's fruit. May we gain energy to know the truth. May our intellects grow clear and bright. May we cherish no ill feeling towards anyone. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
We're going to go over to 43.
Kayena vacha manasendriyarva buddhyatmanava prakrite svabhavat karomi yadyak sakalam parasmai guru varayeti samarpayami. Whatever actions I may perform, impelled by the forces of nature, by body, word, mind, senses, intellect, soul, I offer to the feet of my Sadguru Dev. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. Bless all dimensions of being with peace and joy, love and light.
Victory to that light of truth which overcomes all darkness.
Victory to that light.
Jai Shri Satguru Maharaja Ki.
Jai.
Please bow to the light in yourself. And bow to that same light in everything, everyone else. Thank you so much. This has been fun. Good evening. Paddy's ready for a treat. You ready for a treat?
You gotta
Yay.
do the Saturday Night Live. Goodbye and good night. Like Saturday Night Live, they always say that. You should do it.
Let's just sing it.